Russians not drinking Coca-Cola will just make Russians healthier.
The foundation of human control is control of human perception.
We have the new religion of I am offended.
Because they can't experience love, they just go to the dark side.
Those very same people gave us the official story of 9/11.
No, and that's the problem.
Right.
And you know something else? You won't even bother.
David, how are you, sir?
I'm good, Chris.
Excellent. Are you on the Isle of Wight as we speak?
I'm in Derbyshire.
Bad luck.
We've got the Iconic studios up here, the Iconic media platform, which my son Jamie created about 2-3 years ago. And so I'm doing a lot of work for that now. I've just been in the Hellfire Caves in Wickham, the Hellfire Club Caves, created by an aristocratic type bloke called Sir Francis Dashwood in the 1700s. We went in there for a night for a Halloween special. It was very, very interesting, actually.
Are they natural caves?
No, he built them. This is the thing about Dashwood. He was a very close friend of Benjamin Franklin, actually, who also went into the caves, the founding father of the United States, or one of them. And so I had this idea, let's go in these Hellfire Caves and see what happens. And it was a very interesting experience. It's going to go out on Iconic on Halloween, and because Halloween is it's something that has become a bit of a mini Christmas, a bit of fun, a bit of a laugh and dressing up. But actually, there is a satanic calendar with specific dates for the horrific things they do. I mean, one of them is Halloween. Other one's May Day, Beltane. So these things are real behind the facade of trick and treat and all that stuff. So it was a very interesting experience, and I think it will make a very, very interesting program for people. So I'm up in Derby a lot, but I'm back to the Isle of Wight the end of the week. I'm going to see my grandson Travis be a mascot for Burton Albion Football Club this Saturday. He's only a little boy, 2 years of age, so that's going to be a lot of fun. Yes,
proud granddad moment.
Yeah.
Mm. And yes, give my best to Jamie and Gareth. Gareth very kindly helped to set up our chat today. Absolutely lovely gentleman. He's been on the podcast before. So hi, Gareth. Have you seen? Do you remember the Thai rescue with the kids that got stuck in the cave in Thailand?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, there's a couple of incredible. There's a docudrama, and alongside it, there's a documentary. It's on Netflix at the moment, and it's just utterly incredible. And the amazing thing is when you see the world come together to save, it was 12 kids and their coach. There were people flying in from Australia, top divers. There were the UK sent their best cavers. There were people, there was an anaesthetist from Australia and his diving buddy who actually got the kids out because they put them unconscious, basically, so the water, when they dived, didn't freak them out. And why the hell is it, and this was celebrated the planet over, why is it we can come together for that? And yet when the mainstream clicks its fingers, we will just go and bomb a country flat. We're being led astray, David, aren't we?
Yeah, well, I've been saying this for decades in the books and talks and videos. The foundation of human control is control of human perception. That's it. Because what you perceive leads to how you behave. people behave as they do because they perceive as they do. And so people's perceptions lead to their behavior. So there was all that focus on the kids in the cave. And that focus led to a collective perception and an emotional reaction that we must get those kids out. Because what you had was a obviously appalling situation, which was on the news all the time, day after day. And people could see that these kids were in danger, obviously. So there was this collective, we've got to do something. But when you have a war and people are dropping bombs on people, there is not that same focus. It's much more peripheral. You see a bomb dropping, but you often, most of the time, don't see what was underneath it. I remember during the endless wars in the Middle East, they started talking about smart bombs and all this stuff, which perceptually was saying to you, oh, I know we're firing these missiles at these people who can't defend themselves, but they're smart bombs, you see. They're actually just hitting military targets or hitting buildings. They're not, because they're precise. And so you don't have the same reaction. Oh, okay, well, we're not seeing kids all over the place. And when they want to glean the reaction from the public, the perception, they do the opposite. So they won't show you what the Ukrainians are doing to the Russians and Russian prisoners and what have you, and what they did to Russians in Donbass. But they will show you what has happened to Ukrainians as a result of actions by Russia. And this is absolutely designed quite blatantly to manipulate perception, which manipulates behavior. And the behavior is, we hate the Russians, we must support under any circumstances the Ukrainians. And so you see this all the time, this manipulation of perception. So all the censorship that's going on now is not for a bit of fun, it's to manipulate perception. We get our perceptions from information we receive, whether it's a Facebook post, a news bulletin in a newspaper, or a personal experience. And we take this information received and we form it into a perception. And so if you are only having access to the mainstream narrative, which is the global cult narrative, as I call it, then your perceptions are overwhelmingly going to reflect that narrative. There is still a significant number of people, less and less, thank goodness, but still a significant number of people that still believe what they're told. When you get a situation, as one senior nurse said at the height of the COVID madness, that she was asking consultants if they knew what was in this vaccine, and they said they didn't know, but they were having it anyway, then you're looking at the level of perceptual programming that is possible, that people respond literally to program. And what is now happening, thank goodness, not fast enough, but happening, is the experience, again, experience equals effect on perception, of seeing how we've been lied to. If you're half awake, you'll see it now, is leading to a different behavior. Less and less, fewer and fewer people are having the latest boosters because their perception has changed.
the Prime Minister of the time, Tony Blair and George Bush and the administrations, lied to us to justify an invasion of Iraq. And that is a conspiracy that has cost the lives of staggering numbers of people and created an ongoing catastrophe that's still going on. And let's not forget this. The very same people, not just the same agencies, the same people that told us there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq when they knew they weren't, those very same people gave us the official story of 9/11.
So wherever you look back into ancient history, right up to the present day, those in power have sought to achieve that power through control of perception. And once you control perception, i.e., that you believe authority because authority has your best interests at heart, then you control the behavior of the people. You've got them. And there's two types of mentality, perception, that have got us into this mess. One is you just believe authority because authority tells you to do something, or they tell you that something is, or whatever. And you unquestioningly just believe it and act upon it. Then there's the other group who don't want to act upon it, but are terrified of not acting upon it. And with those two groups, you have the reason why every tyranny in history has been possible. Because there's never enough tyrants compared with the population they want to control. There's never enough, nearly enough, not a fraction of enough. Mm-hmm. Fascism is not introduced by fascists. It's introduced by the acquiescence of the population to the fascists. Same, if it's communism, it doesn't matter what it is. And, so we have a situation where those two groups, those two perceptions, thus behaviors, one does it because they won't question it, one does it because it's frightened of not doing it, have been responsible for every tyranny in history. And the third group, which is getting bigger, thank goodness, is that which says, I'm going to question what you're telling me because I know one thing more than anything else. I know that authority lies. Throughout human history, authority has lied to get its way. Why has it lied? To manipulate the perception and thus the behavior of the population. So therefore, if you're talking to me, Tony Blair, Boris Johnson, Liz Truss, Joe Biden, Macron, Trudeau, I know you're lying. Gates, Schwab, I know you're lying. Mm-hmm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to confirm you're lying, which won't take very long. And then when I have confirmed that, I'm not doing what you're lying to me to make me do. I'm not doing it. I'm not acquiescing. The big no, the most powerful word in the human language. No, not doing it. And so that group of people have been the group that has ended every tyranny in history. Who've said, no, we're not doing it. And those numbers get bigger and eventually the tyranny is overturned. And that's the process that we're going to have to see today. And so when we talk about perception, where does that come from? It comes from consciousness. Okay. So how much consciousness? How expanded is the consciousness that's reaching those perceptions and thus driving that behavior, whatever it is? Well, those that don't question what authority tells them and just do it without thinking, that the amount of consciousness, potentially infinite, that they're accessing to form their perceptions is basically bloody negligible. The second group is accessing more because it sees it doesn't really want to do what it's being told. But it's not accessing enough consciousness to go above the fear that it acquiesces anyway. And so you have the third group. And again, you can't divorce this so-called awakening from what it really is, which is breaking out of myopic consciousness, myopic perception and myopic behavior into something greater. And when you do, you start to go beyond those levels of consciousness, awareness that are going to A, not see what's really going on, and B, they're not going to do what the liars are telling them to do. And that's the process. And the more of this second group who can kind of start to see it but are frightened of not doing it, the more of that group that can summon the courage to go into the third group, the quicker this will come down. But it's all perception. The whole thing's perception. And it's all perceptual manipulation, because that's where behavior comes from. And so if we take our minds back and we start to question, well, hold on a minute, I hear what you're saying, but I'm going to check it out. Oh, you're lying to me then. Then we start the process. Because the next question is, when you see how much we've been lied to about the COVID hoax, the next question on the perceptual awakening is, and people are going through this, what the hell else have I been lied to about? What the hell else have I believed was true when it's not? And that process then starts to expand, and you start to realize the scale, the absolute scale of deceit that's going on all around us.
David, absolutely. I could talk to you for hours about just the children's cartoons things, because we've got a little one, and the amount of devils or symbolic of the devil in kids, it's just unreal. Almost every other character has got like the devil's, not to mention the screen change. It flicks like that. You get it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's bombarding the little one's brains like this all the time. And then we wonder why they go to school and they can't concentrate. This is about the levels of, I believe, is it, I won't pretend that I understand it, but your brain has different levels of focusing, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, what is the brain? That's an interesting question. The brain is not the source of consciousness. That's why they can't find consciousness in the brain. It ain't there. Consciousness is a field of energy on the level that we interact with it. It's an electromagnetic field. It goes out and out and out and out from there if you open yourself to it. But the mind is a electromagnetic field, and it works through the brain. The body is the vehicle that allows us to interact with this reality we call the human world, because everything's a frequency. Everything's a band of frequency or a frequency. Every thought is a frequency. Depending on the nature of the thought dictates what the nature of the frequency. Emotions, different emotions, love, joy, depression, hatred, what have you, are very different frequencies, which we generate when we feel those emotions. And so we're living in a sea of frequency. And the thing that people don't realize, because the system doesn't tell them, is what a narrow, ridiculously narrow band of frequency we actually live in. I mean, people think that when they look through their eyes, they can see everything in the space they're looking at. They can't. They can see virtually nothing in the space they're looking at, because what they call visible light in mainstream science is a band of frequency, and it's the only band of frequency that our eyes can see and decode, our brain decodes. And everything else that exists in the entirety of infinite reality is beyond that band of frequency. So humans are almost blind in terms of what we can see, because the body is programmed through the 5 senses to decode into a sense of reality only a narrow band of frequency. And this is how narrow it is. According to mainstream science, the electromagnetic spectrum is 0.005% of what exists in energy in all its forms in the universe. Some say it's as high as 0.5, but it's tiny. And visible light, which is the only frequency band that we can see, everything we can see is within it, is a fraction of the 0.005%. And the whole, because, why is there a secret society network, Chris? To keep secrets. Mm-hmm. Who from? The population. That's why there's a secret society network, this global cult, this amalgamation of it that I talk about. And the idea of this cult, this secret society network, is A, to hide from the population where they're being taken, though we're starting to see now more and more as it becomes reality, and two, to keep from the population the nature of reality and that they're actually experiencing and the nature of the I, the true I. Mm. So if you want to keep people focused only in the 5 sense level of perception, thus behavior, then you want them to self-identify the I with the body. That's the point. The body decodes the world through the 5 senses. You don't want people going beyond that very much. You want to keep them in that myopic 5 sense reality, a reality that thinks and perceives that when you look through your eyes, you're seeing everything in the space you're looking at, when you're seeing a tiny fraction of it. And so if you want to hold people in that sense of self-identity, which leads to the narrow band that you perceive, you want them to self-identify their I, who they are, with the labels of the body. That's the foundation of it all, really. You want them to think man, woman, sexuality, income bracket, race, religion, all these labels. And if you look at it, because what they want, of course, as more and more people awaken, they're trying to push people back and back into this myopia. This is why, or one reason why, there are other reasons, we have this long list of letters now, LGBTQ, and on and on and on it goes, getting bigger all the time, it seems to me. It's because what is it doing? It's subdividing the previous labels into smaller and smaller and smaller labels of self-identity. So someone now will be self-identifying their I, who they are, by their sexual preference. That's not who they are. Their race is not who they are. Their income bracket is not who they are. Their religion, their color, their whatever is not who they are. It's an experience that who they are, consciousness, ultimately infinite consciousness, if you open your mind enough, is having. And it's a brief experience. But if you look at the way it's done, Chris, they don't want us to do that. Oh, I see it now. Why did I see it before? Because you were there before. That's why. And so the idea is to hold people in this 5 sense myopia. And so this is why we're getting this metaverse. The metaverse is a sub-reality, a cyber sub-reality that they want our attention focused into, because as we go more and more into that, we're coming further and further and further out of that. Because once you, you'll know this, and lots of people watching this will know it, that once your waters break on your consciousness, you suddenly start to see things you couldn't see before. And that's the last thing this cult wants. And that's why it's all about focusing it. That's just what it is. Focusing attention only in the 5 senses, when the 5 senses, the body, is merely a vehicle that operates within this narrow band of frequency and allows us to experience it. If my consciousness wanted to hold this cup up, it couldn't, because my consciousness is operating, my mind, if you like, at a totally different frequency to this cup. So if I want to interact with this world, I need an outer vehicle that's vibrating within the same frequency so that that interaction is possible. And that's what the body is. And what they've done is manipulate us to self-identify with the vehicle and forget the nature of the true I. It's like having two spacemen on the moon and they self-identify with their spacesuit. You can argue over the fact of who's got the best spacesuit. And, you know, it's Houston, we got a problem. Bill thinks he's his spacesuit. Oh my God. Oh, so does Jeff. Suddenly it's chaos, mate, isn't it? That's why the world is chaos. That's why the world is mad.
I reckon I've worked out why it is, David, right? And you can give me your thoughts on this. So, like you said, we're infinite consciousness. We are the universe, right? So if you're the universe, David, and I'm the universe, but we're just experiencing it in these separate bodies made up of carbon molecules, which, like you said, they're just vehicles. Universe here, same. So if you're the universe, David, and I'm the universe, I love you and I know you love me and I want the best for you, right? We've got out of the birth certificate identity thing. But here's the thing, if everybody realized that, there'd be no war, would there? You know, there'd be no fighting. There'd be the psychopaths, as I call them. I don't think they can.
Rightly.
Yeah. I don't think they can experience love. I think there's something going on there. So they get out the third dimension, out the matrix, they get up into the fourth, and it's like Darth Vader, because they can't experience love, they just go to the dark side. Does this sound about right to you?
Well, yeah, there are many things that come from that, mate. I've just published my latest book. It's called The Trap. And I do go deeply into some of these things. And where does this come from? Where does it all come from? What is the force that is, in the end, driving what I call the global cult? Another question, why do these global cultists, and I've researched so many of them, why does it always kind of end up with Satanism, pedophilia too? There's reasons for that, but Satanism. Why does Satanists do their rituals to their gods? Why do they sacrifice people to their gods? Why did the ancients sacrifice people to the gods? Who are these bloody gods? And, you know, what I've been driving towards over this last 32 years, consciously doing this, is I want the engineers. Okay, I'll expose the oil rags, but I want the engineers. Where is this coming from? Because if you're going to stop an outcome, you have to eventually get to the cause of the outcome, and then the outcome stops. You know, people say, what's the solution? I'm not interested in solutions. Solutions invariably lead to other problems. I'm interested in the cause of what's happening. Then you don't need solutions, because once the cause is gone, the problem's gone. And so who are these bloody gods? And I'll tell you, you know, I go into this in detail in The Trap, and there's an audio version as well out at the same time. I concluded just after the turn of the millennium that we live in a simulation, that this is an enormously advanced version of a virtual reality computer game. And, you know, I can go into detail on how it works, really. And so I looked at it, and when I came out with this, there was only another guy called Nick Bostrom that I found anyway at Oxford University, who'd concluded that we quite possibly live in a simulation. But since then, his version of it was different to mine, but we did agree on the simulation part of it. And in the years, decades that have passed since then, more and more mainstream scientists have started to look at this. There have been, scientific studies that have asked the question, is it a simulation? And more have concluded that it is. And I said just after the turn of the millennium that this is a simulation, and the limits of the simulation at this level of it, the one we experience as the human world, is the speed of light. And the speed of light is not the fastest speed. I've been saying this for so long, that possible, but it seems to be to so many because it's the fastest speed within this level of reality, this part of the simulation. And then in April of 2021, there was an article in Scientific American by an academic who said he's concluded that we live in a simulation, and that the limit of the simulation is the speed of light. I nearly fell off my chair when I read that all those years after I said it. And it was interesting. What I was saying, way back, is that what we call the laws of physics are actually only the rules encoded in the game, encoded in the simulation. That's what we call the laws of physics. That's why when people leave this level of the reality of what we call death through near-death experiences, they describe a very different reality with a very different, quote, law of physics. Because this is the law of physics at this level of the game. It's just the rules of the game. And what this guy was pointing out in Scientific American is that you can write the rules of the game. Say you're writing the rules of a virtual reality game. You write the rules of the game, the limits of the game, what can be done and what can't be done. But you're still, he said, going to be limited in your possibilities by the processing speed of the game, the processing speed of the computer system that you're working with. And he pointed out, I say quite rightly, that the speed of light is the limit of the processing speed of this simulation. And so anyway, I started looking at this, and when I was writing the trap, lots of things synchronistically happened that kind of started putting information in front of me. It's something I've experienced endlessly since 1990. And all this information coming to me was about the simulation, but more than that. I thought, hold on. Okay, I get that you can manipulate or entice consciousness into this simulation. Okay. What I don't get is that when you leave the simulation, and you've almost certainly, as with most people, if you look around the world, had a very unpleasant experience, why the bloody hell do you come back? What? Through reincarnation? Because, I've looked at reincarnation over a long period of time. I've read endless accounts of people who claim to have had previous lives, and even little kids with no knowledge of this world at all, who've in fine detail often have described lives they've had, their name, where, and all that stuff, and what they did. And researchers found that they were actually describing something real, that it did actually happen to the person they were talking about. So I kind of thought, yeah, okay, I get this reincarnation. And then I look, okay, so the Eastern religions believe in reincarnation. Okay, Christianity doesn't, but the Eastern religions do. So I looked at the Eastern religions and I thought, okay, what are you telling me? And they said, well, what you have to do is keep reincarnating onto this planet endlessly to learn lessons, to become enlightened enough to get out of the cycle. Okay, and then I thought, well, hold on. According to mainstream science, compared with the size of the universe as it's projected to be, planet Earth is the equivalent of a billionth of a pinhead. So I'm being asked here to believe that I have to keep reincarnating onto a billionth of a pinhead to learn lessons to allow me to not have to keep reincarnating onto a billionth of a pinhead. Okay, well, I'm not sure I get that one. And also, if I'm learning lessons, right? Yeah, well, okay. So why don't I remember the previous lessons when I come in for the next one? Why am I always starting from a blank sheet of paper? And I looked at this and the synchronicity of information and experience that was coming to me while I was writing the trap. One of the things I did was I read the accounts of people who'd been put into a hypnotic state and had been taken back to what they call the between life state, between human lives. And what I found compelling was the descriptions of the between life reality were compellingly common and similar. And I looked at what they were all saying and I thought, that's another bloody hierarchy. That's another hierarchy. That's not freedom. What's going on? And it seems to me that what we're looking at is a simulation that has multiple levels. It has the level that we experience in a body we call a human life, and it has what we call the spirit world. People call the spirit world. And the spirit world, or this level of it, not infinite reality, but this level of it that is another level of the simulation, is actually still a control system. And when you go out and you come back, you go out and you come back, round and round and round. Now, what the Eastern religions say is that you have to continue on this cycle until you reach a state of enlightenment that allows you to leave. Now, what does that mean? This simulation with its multiple levels is actually like everything else. It's a frequency band. It's a band of frequency. And as with the old analog radio and television, frequencies can interfere with each other if they're really close on the dial, or they can be in the same space but miles apart on the dial, and thus there's no interference. And so if you are in this band of frequency and you do not raise your own frequency to the point where you can leave it, you operate within it in your own state of frequency, then you're not going to get out of here. You're going to leave the body, but you're still going to be in the simulation. And so when they talk about you've got to reach a state of enlightenment, what are they talking about? You've got to reach a state of expanded awareness, perceptual awareness, that generates a frequency high enough for you to pass through the walls of the simulation. And there's an ancient kind of esoteric concept called the ring pass not. And you find the same thing in all the different cultures, that there is a level, they call it ring pass not in this case, that you can't get through it unless you are a high enough frequency to leave. So it's not just, Chris, in this human world that they're trying to control perception to hold your frequency down. They're also trying to do it when you leave the body. And this is why it's so important when people leave this reality that they are aware of the true I, they're aware of their true nature, aware of the bloody game, the trap, as I call it in the book, that they can get out of here. Otherwise, it's just recycling back. And the Eastern religions talk about reincarnation, the cycle, as like a natural means of reaching enlightenment. I'm sorry, I beg to differ. It's a trap to keep us recycling. And why? Because it brings us to this other level, and you've also already mentioned part of it, the fourth dimension, or what's also called the astral dimension. You know, when we talk about other dimensions, you kind of get the feeling, or people get the feeling, oh, other dimensions, oh, they're right out there. Well, some of them are, that are very, very much higher frequencies to the one we're experiencing. Not difficult. But other dimensions, like the fourth dimension or the astral dimension, as it's called, are very close to this one, especially the lower levels of this astral fourth dimension, very close to this one. In fact, they basically bleed into each other and allow interference. And these demonic entities that I say are behind this simulation, and not just me. When you start to read ancient accounts, they call these demonic entities different names. Like Christians will call them demons. The Islamic world will call them the jinn. The Gnostics called them archons, which was Greek for rulers. And you find these different names, but they're all describing the same force. And it operates in the lower levels of this astral dimension, this fourth dimension that bleeds into this one. And this is where it's coming from. And when the elite, as they perceive themselves, because they are children of the gods, the demons, when they do their satanic rituals, they're interacting with these demonic entities just outside of human sight. When I was in the caves, the Hellfire Caves, last Friday night, that's what I was talking about in there, as people will see in the Iconic program. That place is a haven for these demonic entities, because all the satanic ritual that's gone on in those caves, I mean, Sir Francis Dashwood in the 1700s, he had those caves, and they're a quarter of a mile in length, cut specifically, despite the cover story, to allow things to go on that no one else would know about, apart from those that were doing them. And when you are doing satanic rituals to the gods in the same area over and over and over again, it thins out the dimensional differences between our world and this lower fourth dimensional astral world. When I went into these caves, the Hellfire Caves the other night, that's what I was experiencing, because Dashwood had these caves cut quarter of a mile in length, so that they could do whatever they liked and no one would know about it. And so when you do these rituals, these satanic rituals, these sacrifice rituals to the gods, you over and over again in the same place, what you're doing is thinning out the dimensional frequency differences. And I've talked to Satanist people and people who were forced to be in satanic rituals without really wanting to, all over the world. And they've described how in these major rituals, these entities that look anything but human slip through the vortexes that these rituals create, and they can manifest in this reality for a short time. This is the force that is behind global events. It's, we see the Gateses, we see the Faucis, we see the Rothschilds, we see the Rockefellers, we see the Klaus Schwabs, we see the George Soroses, but they're vehicles, they are assets and agents of this demonic force. And this is where it's really coming from. And just to finish the point, this demonic force, because it's in such a chaotic, inverted, distorted, schematic state, it cannot access, if for want of a term, source energy to nourish itself. So it's had to set up an energetic source of its own. And it's human energy. It's human, mental, and emotional energy that's driving the whole thing. So when Morpheus held the battery up in the Matrix movie and said the machines have turned humans into one of these, it was actually a profound truth, a profound reality. And so if you are in this distorted, what you might call evil state, I define evil as the absence of love, the absence of empathy, the absence of compassion. That's why they do what they do to the human family. It's because they have no emotional consequence for anything they do. empathy is the fail-safe mechanism of human behavior. If you have empathy for that which you are affecting, then it's going to affect your behavior and what you'll do. I can't do that because I could feel what they would experience if I did. But when you have no empathy, and these demonic entities do not, there is no limit. In fact, you get off on causing suffering and tragedy for people. And that's why these people that we see in the public arena are quite okay with doing what they've done to the world since, throughout, but certainly since the COVID card was played. What they're doing now in terms of destroying people's ability to survive financially, they will have no emotional consequence for that at all. If you have no emotional consequence for sacrificing a child, you're going to have no emotional consequence on euthanasia and genocide, none whatsoever. And so the idea of this whole thing in terms of the energy source, human energy source of these demonic entities, is that if you are operating within a certain band of frequency, a low band of frequency, which these demonic entities are, then you can only absorb energy within that band of frequency. And that's what this simulation, this matrix, has been set up to do, to generate maximum low vibrational, emotional and mental energy from humanity. So a war becomes an energetic banquet because of the low vibrational energy, fear, depression, anxiety, hatred, conflict, resentment, all these things, all these emotions generate energy frequencies within the band of frequency that these entities operate on in the lower levels of this astral dimension. And so they can feed off it. When you are joyful, when you are loving, when you are in a high vibrational state like that, they cannot absorb that energy. And thus the whole point is to keep people in this fear-based low vibrational state, because that's what they can feed off. And that's why the world is as it is. That's why it's manipulated to be as it is. And the end game, if you like, that we're now beginning to see unfold is to control human perception, not just by controlling the information that people receive, thus the perceptions that people reach, but to do it directly by connecting artificial intelligence, i.e. the demonic realm, to the human brain, so that we will then get our perceptions direct. And our perceptions will be to generate this low vibrational energetic state, which they can then feed off. And then they've created a technological version of what they've been doing all along.
David, can we reassure people at home that they're going to lose, and they're going to lose massively? Because, well, for a start, they didn't bargain that I would come along, and I'm not going to put up with that shit. It makes me laugh, like Bill Gates. He might think can be plugged into whatever, but let's be honest.
He probably already is, actually. Yeah. I mean, I look at Bill Gates, Chris. I mean, a lot of these people are bloody morons, mate.
Well, they all are. And it's not to say that the fact they believe in all of this, I honestly believe I have the conduit to what they're looking for. Well, it's like Star Wars. They've gone to the dark side to try to get their kicks because they can't experience love. But I can. It's in abundance. It means every day I wake up in paradise. I love, everybody, even these morons. And they're going to lose, David, because what I'm selling is a better deal than what they're selling. And what you're selling is it's a better deal than what they're selling.
Well, you see, this is the point. I went into these caves the other night, and, you're supposed to go in. I never felt a smear of anxiety, never mind bloody fear, because I know I'm more powerful than they are. And
Yes.
what they do, again, we keep coming back to it. It's a mind trick. They have to, for instance, two things. They have to persuade us that they have power, whether it's Gates or Biden or whatever. They have to persuade us that they have power. They do not. They have to persuade us to fear them. And then through fear, we go into the low vibrational state that gives them lunch, but also fear leads to acquiescence. And the two things actually both come back to acquiescence. You believe authority has power, and so you acquiesce to it. You acquiesce to it without thinking, or you acquiesce to it because you're frightened of not acquiescing to it. And you acquiesce to the demonic realm in all its forms and expressions in our world because you fear the demons, when actually they're a bunch of prats, and they have no power. The power is what we give them. So I went in these caves the other night, and they had no power over me because I wasn't frightened of them. And people go in there and they're very anxious and all that. So I don't understand why. It's very demonic, the energy that you feel when you go in there. I've been in there twice. But it doesn't mean that it has power over you. And in the same way, people say, okay, what's the solution? Well, I say, get yourself a pocket calculator, mate. Just put in the population of the world, coming up to 8 billion, and then take away the inner circle of this cult. Well, that will be it'll be negligible. You get the inner core of this cult in a single room. Then add in all the politicians that are working for the cult in knowledge. Then all the politicians that are working for the cult not even realizing there is a bloody cult. Then put all the law enforcement on and put all the military on. And then take that lot away from 8 billion people. And you're still left with 7 billion, blah, 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 blah. In other words, the very calculated dynamic, if you like, makes it a nonsense that a few can control the many. It's a nonsense. And it's a mind game. That's how it's done. And so if someone comes out of Downing Street or Washington or the White House or whatever and says, we've had a discussion and this is what's going to happen. You remember those COVID things with these pillocks like Whitty and Valance and Johnson standing in front of you night after night saying, you're not going to do this, you're not going to do that, you're going to stay in home, you've got to 6 feet away, you've got to wear a mask. The economy destroyed in terms of small business and non-cult corporation businesses, which is now being continued by what they're doing to the energy prices because of perception, control of perception, because people fear that which has no power. The power that authority has is the power we give to authority in the form of acquiescence. The power that these demonic entities have, this demonic realm has, is merely the power that we give to that demonic realm in the form of fear.
Yes.
So take the two away. There's nothing to fear. We're all it is, has been, and ever can be, having a brief human experience. And we are an eternal journey of exploring forever. I mean, that's as bad as it bloody gets. So there's nothing to fear, except, as Roosevelt said, I think, but fear itself.
Exactly. It's why, I know two people they didn't lock down, and I think they're talking to each other now, right?
Oh, well, yeah.
I think there's two people. I think there's two people that wouldn't be seen dead. Excuse my facetiousness, folks, but I say wearing their underpants on their face. That's just me. We've all got to have a little bit for ourselves. And, but David, when I went in the supermarket, we got a big one near us. There's, 300 people in there, maybe shopping. Like, I would never go along with that stuff anyway, because people need to see someone standing up to these monsters. They need to see someone like me walking in, smiling because I'm unafraid. I'm aware my ancestors have been through however many, the miracle of evolution to get me here. They're pretty tough stuff we're made of. No one makes me scared over in order to, make a killing on the stock exchange. And I think we're the personification of what you're talking about. Is just don't be afraid, folks. Stop being so scared. One step further, David, sorry, it's your show, but,
okay.
I get approached a lot by young men, but in particular, and you see a lot of comments, and they're all so preoccupied with who's the artist. Is it the Royal Marine Commandos? Or is it the parachute? It's the people that go out there and stand up for the children by not wearing their bloody underpants on their face because they believe the narrative coming from the mainstream media, which is aimed at a mentality of about, I'd say, 14 to 19-year-olds. That's their pitch. And I wouldn't watch it. I'm 53. Why do I want to, I'm 53. I've got such much better stuff to do with my time than watch something that's so embarrassingly, patronizingly fake. Sorry, David, I went off on one there.
No, I agree with all that. See, first of all, what the military and the police need to understand is that the so-called elite that give them orders have total and utter contempt for them. To the elite, they're just a means to an end. They couldn't care less. So, you can be a police officer all your life, and you can give, or a soldier all your life, and you can put your life at risk, and you can serve the community in many and various ways. They have total contempt for you. So therefore, my question is, what on earth are you doing what they tell you and enslaving your fellow human beings when they have contempt for you anyway, and you're just fodder to them, totally surplus to requirements once you've done what they want you to do. You see this in the way they throw soldiers out to dry when they come back to civilian life with all the psychological problems of what they've experienced. They couldn't care bloody less. But another point on what you said earlier is, they're not just after our perception, although it is an expression of perception. They're after our spirit. They want to break our spirit. And so bring us into a state of nodding subjugation. Now, how do you do that? What is the bulwark against your spirit being broken? Your self-respect. Your self-respect. Those with self-respect, they're the ones that say, not doing it. No, doing that. Don't be stupid. Put a face nappy on. Are you joking? Ridiculous. And they hold their self-respect. So what they're trying to do is break your self-respect. I mean, people putting face nappies on. You remember in Britain, I've sat there in a cafe or something, and strapping blokes have walked to the door. They put a face nappy on. They've walked to a table and taken it off again, because that's what the law said they had to do. Well, the government decree said they had to do. And then when they've finished their meal, I'm surprised they even took it off to eat. They put it back on again to walk back to the door. And when they've gone through the door, they're taking it off. Now, I mean, anyone who does that has handed over their self-respect, because once your self-respect's gone, your individual sovereignty is gone, and you just become part of a submissive, subjugated blob. And because it's all psychological, these things are worked out. It's not happened by accident. It's worked out. One of the things this cult knows and has made sure it knows is how the human psyche works. And that's the level at which the manipulation happens, manipulating the human psyche to dictate behavior. So when we take our psyche back, when we take our sovereignty back, our consciousness sovereignty back, they can't do that to us anymore. And that's why when you go on social media, for instance, run by the corporations owned by the cult, like Twitter and Facebook and all the others, YouTube and Google that owns YouTube, they'll delete you. They'll delete you because they're terrified of awake people or awakening people exposing the narrative, because they know their narrative will not stand up to scrutiny. They know open debate would destroy them, so they stop open debate.
Well, they're going to try to.
Try to, yeah, exactly. Because again,
yes.
Look at the numbers. Look at the numbers. They banned me from all the main platforms on the internet, the social media platforms, in April 2020. I was deleted from the mainstream internet straight away in terms of the social media platforms and YouTube. But you still get it out there. Because, you know, if they're trying to shut you up, then you must be saying something right. And if you're saying something right, then you'll find another way of saying it. And that's what we must do. And what's been great is the way that, you know, necessity is the mother of invention, they say, is that other platforms have emerged as a result of the censorship of the cult-owned platforms. So there's been a lot of good things happen.
Well, like Iconic, and I was very privileged to be a guest on your station. Do we call it channel?
Channel, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Yes. How the global cult, David? Are we able to talk more about it, or is that something we save for another day? I know who they are. It's clear as day. When you've been like you've been at this 30 years, I've been at it 20 now. When you look at the nudge unit, you see the person that runs it, and then you look at this, and you see the person that runs that, and then you see the Bush cabinet, and you see the people. It's I call them the KM, which is our little acronym that people on my channel, and I'm not even going to explain it now. Okay. But it's a certain region in the world that begins with K. No, folks, it's nothing to do with religion or a certain people. It's a historic thing. But then we've also got the old, here's a great book for everyone, 1666. Robert Sepper talks about the Sabbatean Frankist cult when they met the Rothschilds in 1666. And they met Adam Weishaupt from the what people refer to as the Illuminati, but I don't think it was ever called that. And they decided to come up with a plan to control humanity. But what are your thoughts on all of this, David?
Well, I've written at great length about the Sabbatean cult, which began in the 1600s, so you can certainly chart it to then, with a guy called Sabbatai Zevi, who was supposed to be the Jewish Messiah. And the Sabbatean cult was taken further on by Jacob Frank in the following century and expanded massively. And Frank and Mayer Amstel Rothschild, the founder of the Rothschild dynasty, because the Rothschilds were called Bauer. They were a Middle Ages occult family. And then Mayer Amstel Rothschild changed the name to Rothschild, which in German, where they lived in Frankfurt, meant red shield or red sign. And it was based on the Star of David on their home in Frankfurt. And Adam Weishaupt also was involved, as was Jacob Frank, in the creation of what you say, the so-called Bavarian Illuminati. For people who have not come across this, the Sabbateans, or Sabbatean Frankists as they became, are an inversion of the Judaic religion in a sense. It goes back much further. An inversion in this way, when Judaism had a fast day, for instance, Sabbateans had a feast day. Everything was inverted. They interbred with each other obsessively within the cult, and they hate Jewish people. I mean, they hate Jewish people, and especially when Frank came along, they became expert at, but they did before, but after he became involved, became expert in infiltration. They infiltrated the Roman Church, they infiltrated even earlier the Jewish religion. And what happened with Zevi is that he was basically told by the Sultan of the Islamic Ottoman Empire that you either shut up about there being this Jewish Messiah, or because he gathered a massive following for the time, massive, or you convert to Islam. So he converted to Islam, but they didn't really. I mean, a lot of his supporters were aghast at that. A lot of them did it with him. But they became known as the Donma or Donme, which means to turn. And they were people who outwardly appeared to be followers of Islam, but actually were followers of the Sabbatean satanic religion. And I follow it through. I wrote a book called The Trigger, which is a thick book, which looks, first of all, in the first half, at the nonsense of the official story of 9/11. It is so nonsensical, it's childlike. And in the second half, I look in very great detail at who was actually behind it. Detailed researching of that this Sabbatean cult was absolutely forefront. And it was the Sabbatean cult, if you go back to Nazi Germany, that was behind the Nazis. Because they couldn't, I mean, people say, well, why would people claiming to be Jewish be supporting the Nazis?
Because they're imposters, aren't they, David?
Yeah, because they're imposters, because they would do that to Jewish people, because they hate freaking Jewish people. Yeah. And then they were behind, not least the Rothschilds. They were the center of the whole movement of Jewish people out of Europe into Palestine, and they called it Israel. And then I have a chapter in the Trigger called Atlantic Crossing, and that was when this Sabbatean cult moved in on America. And so if you just look, just as an example, we had the invasion of Iraq based on a lie. We had the invasion of Libya, which removed Gaddafi, which, whatever you say about him, he held the country together. And look what's happened since. It's the Stone Age. And they sought very, very hard and long to do the same to Syria and Assad. And the invasion too, immediately after 9/11, of Afghanistan. Now, I show in The Trigger how this was all orchestrated in the background by this Sabbatean cult. And one of its expressions was the Project for the New American Century, which was a think tank created by, co-founded by a guy called Robert Kagan. And I would say a Sabbatean, personally.
Yes, well, yeah, when you see it, you see it, don't you?
Yeah, and
should we, David? Should we just clarify for folks? We're not talking about Jewish people, folks.
No,
we're talking about imposters.
We're talking about imposters.
Yeah,
that have not only fooled the world, they've fooled the Jewish population.
Yes.
The Jewish population believe that this Sabbatean cult and its assets that hate Jewish people. That's why they oversaw what happened to them in Nazi Germany. The population see them as one of them. This is the way they infiltrate.
Yeah,
it's the way they infiltrated the Roman Church. Not that it needed much bloody infiltrating, to be honest. And this is how they do it. So if you just take what I've just said and play it forward to current events, in 2014, there was a guy called, let me just go back even further to show how ludicrous this is. In 2004, they had in Ukraine the so-called Orange Revolution, where people like Soros were involved. And they overthrew a president called Viktor Yanukovych, who was a guy who was very much influenced more by Russia than the European Union and the West. And they threw him out in a so-called revolution. What then happened, this is the ludicrous nature of politics, is they brought in another guy, and the Ukrainian people didn't like what the other guy did in his period in office. So they came to another election, and to get this guy out, they had to vote for the other party that was still headed by Viktor Yanukovych. So what they actually did, I went there in 2010 to speak, and I talked to a lot of people about all this. And in 2010, Yanukovych was back in, and they voted him back in because the two-party system meant, well, if you don't, then you get the same guy you don't like, which was put in by, it was an American coup, the 2004 Orange Revolution. And so we come to 2014, and there's another coup against Yanukovych, and he fled then to Russia. Now, the person who orchestrated that coup for America, i.e. for the cult, was a lady called Victoria Nuland. Mm-hmm. Victoria Nuland is the wife of Robert Kagan, who co-founded the Project for the New American Century, which in September 2000 listed a series of countries that they wanted to regime change when the Bush administration of Boy Bush came in the following January. And those countries were Iraq, Syria, Libya, and which followed after Bush came to power, and others followed, like Obama, another bloody fraud he is. And so Yanukovych is thrown out by the manipulations of Victoria Nuland, Kagan's wife, and you see the tape, the leaked tape at the time, around 2014, when she was talking to the American ambassador in Ukraine, and they were deciding who was going to be in the government. This is America.
Yeah, we played that little clip a couple of days ago. It's incredible.
And who now is running the State Department, so-called Biden State Department? What a joke! He doesn't know what day it is. But who's running the situation now with Ukraine and the conflict with Russia? Victoria bloody Nuland, and they're running this agenda for the world. So they'll be behind Schwab, they'll be behind Gates. I mean, the Rockefellers are behind Gates. Rockefellers are massively part of this. Rockefellers, the oil tycoon, J.D. Rockefeller, he was behind the creation of what we call Big Pharma. He was also behind the creation of the American so-called education system. The Rockefellers created and established in 1948 the World Health Organization. They still control it via Bill Gates, its biggest, certainly biggest private funder, second only to the United States.
Council on Foreign Relations as well.
All these different aspects of the cult, because this cult is like a spider's web. You've got the spider at the center, which is ultimately this demonic force. And then as you come out from the center, the different strands in the web, the strands closest to the spider, they're the most secretive and exclusive secret societies. And then as you come out from the spider, you hit the secret societies we do know about. Well, we know they exist anyway, like the Freemasons, and I'm talking the inner core, not Bill and Joe down the lodge. The Knights of Malta, the Knights Templar, the inner core of the Jesuit order, on and on it goes. And you come out eventually, still in the hidden, to what I call the cusp in the web. And that's where you have the Council on Foreign Relations in America. You have the Trilateral Commission, operates worldwide, the Bilderberg Group, the Club of Rome that was created by this web in 1968, specifically to exploit environmental concerns to justify a transformation of global society. And also in this cusp level of the web, you have this enormous now number of non-governmental organizations, NGOs, the many prominent ones funded by George Soros, an asset of the Sabbatean cult, by the way. And also you have these massive number of so-called think tanks, like the Project for the New American Century.
World Economic Forum.
Yeah, exactly. World Economic Forum, classic. It's really come to the fore in recent times. So this cusp in the web, those organizations, their job is to take the agenda for the world from the hidden part of the web and to play it out into the seen part of the web via governments, government agencies, the banking system, corporations, the education system, and so on and so forth, the medical system through the World Health Organization. When you therefore observe the world from a myopic point of view, all these organizations look unconnected in the world of the scene. They generate events, happenings that appear to be random. But when you start to awaken and connect the dots and see how the tapestry instead of the strands works, how the dots connect, you realize that if you go deep enough in these organizations, whether it's a government agency, World Health Organization, whatever, Silicon Valley, created by this web, then it's not random at all. And these organizations actually are all connected. They head them with either people that know what's going on and support it, or just pathetic people that do what they're told because they're compliant, back to what we were talking about earlier. So the world, once you realize this web exists and these organizations are controlled by the web, it starts to make absolute sense in why things happen as they do.
David, I'm aware of the time and that you're a very busy man, and you've very kindly given us almost 2 hours of your time. I could chat for another 2 hours easily. Perhaps we can do it again.
Yeah, that'd be great, Chris. Yeah.
Yes. I have one last question, and this is in homage to my podcast manager, Luke, bless him. He said, could you ask David, in view of your days as a goalkeeper, David, which is just incredible in itself, to play as a league goalkeeper is that you've lived many lives, David.
Yeah.
But he said it's the 1986 World Cup final. Diego Maradona's coming in, and he's fisting the. That sound a bit rude. He's thumping the ball into the net with his hand.
Yeah, the hand of God, he called it, didn't he?
What would have been the result if you'd been in goal?
Well, I hope I'd have clattered him. But Peter Shilton, the goalkeeper, I actually played schoolboy football against him in the Leicester Schools League. He was 2 years older than me. And so I went off and played for Coventry City 2 years after he went off to play for Leicester City, and became the most capped goalkeeper, and indeed the most capped player in English football history, and also played 1,000 league games, which was amazing. And I felt for him that night, Shilton, because you do what a goalkeeper does. You come out to punch the ball. And Maradona put his hand up and scored the goal. But no, I look back with some affection on my time as goalkeeper, and it taught me many things. You know, in sport, I guess, you know, in the military, it's the same, very much so. In certainly in the field of battle, that you go through emotions one after the other that might take, you know, weeks or months apart in an everyday life, but you're having to deal with these different up and down emotions all the time, and it does teach you a lot. It does teach you to get up and get on with it. And I had that because I joined Coventry City, and after 6 months or something like that, playing for Coventry, my left knee swelled up for no apparent reason, and never went down. And I was out from playing for about 6 months, and they said, we don't know what it is. So I wasn't in any pain. So they said, we'll start playing again and we'll see what happens. And I started playing again. I was very successful, actually. And then my left elbow swelled up for no apparent reason. Then my right knee, then my right ankle. And I'm developing what they told me anyway, eventually, was rheumatoid arthritis. But I didn't want to give up playing football. And eventually I left Coventry and went to play for Hereford United in the Football League. And I got in their first team at 19, 20, which was, for a goalkeeper, was a real great thing. It was very rare in those days to have a league goalkeeper that young, really. And every morning imagine, mate, doing this now. At Hereford United, of course, the SAS at the base at a place called Credden Hill, just outside Hereford. And they had great sports facilities and football pitches and everything. And Hereford United, every weekday morning, we used to go training at the SAS barracks. Imagine doing it now. I mean, they'd lose their head. But we did it because it was the pre 9/11 world, And every single morning that I trained on cold winter days, because I didn't want to. I mean, I didn't want to tell the club. I mean, Coventry knew, but then I joined Hereford, and there was a gap between them, so they didn't know that I had this arthritis, and I was playing well when I was in the team. So they, no one thought anything of it. I was just a player who was playing. But every morning, that's why I always remember the SAS barracks, because on cold winter's mornings when it was damp and freezing, and we did the warm up. Every morning I was in freaking agony with the arthritis, warming up with it. And every morning I woke up and I got out of bed. I knew that in an hour or so, I was going to be in agony again. And you kind of, once you warmed up, it was better, and you were able to then do the other training. And the matches, the adrenaline got me through them. And where I'm going with this is that it triggered a real fierce determination in me not to go under, no matter what. I was going to keep going as long as I could. I mean, I knew I wasn't going to have a full career or anything like, but I wanted to get it as long as I could. And so it was a period that gave me fierce determination, not to feel sorry for myself, but when you're faced with adversity, as I was going to be later in life, of course, then you got up and you got on with it. And so that's what that stayed with me, that determination. It was something my father said to me, when I was a kid. He said, you're never finished in life until you say yourself, I'm finished. Doesn't matter what anyone says about you, anyone does about you, you're never finished until you admit or conclude yourself, I'm finished. Then you are, because nothing else you can do about it. And, people need to realize that no matter what they throw at us in this winter, and they're going to throw everything to break our spirit, no one can break our spirit. indeed one person could break our spirit, and that's us.
Yeah.
They can't break our spirit. Demons can't break our spirit. You know, the authorities in the human world can't break our spirit. They can try to, of course, but they can't do it. Only one person can break our spirit, and that's us allowing it to happen. And we mustn't, because once that's gone, then so is everything else.
Yes, we mustn't and we won't. They'll have a bit of a job on their hands.
Well, they will with me and you, mate.
Yeah. Because I love life. I'm not.
Sure.
I'm not going anywhere. And yes, David, absolutely wonderful. Please just stay on the line on the Zoom so I can thank you properly. But for the purposes of the recording, absolutely wonderful. Just on a personal note, thank you so much for what you've added to my life. And I say to everyone out there, you know, folks, listen to things. We're in a cancel culture now. People hear something and they just want to cancel people like me, like David. What, you don't have to agree with everything I say, but if you don't listen, you got nothing with which to then go forwards in your life and go, right, yeah. So I just want to thank David so much, because I think over the years you've really helped to put a lot of pieces in my jigsaw puzzle. And this chat I mean, who can I chat with about the Sabbatean Frankist cult? My mates would think, well, I haven't actually got any friends, except I've got about four really good ones. And I can chat to them about anything. But if I was to go like next door and chat about the Sabbatean Frankist, they think I was mad.
Yeah,
so to be able to have this conversation, David, it means so much to me.
But that's a real important point, actually, that you've just raised. I said earlier, this world is completely inverted, and I don't mean a bit. I mean it's totally inverted. Mm-hmm. So if they call you mad, it's confirmation of your sanity.
Oh, yes.
That because in a world that's insane, and it is, if an insane world thinks you're sane, then you've got a problem. When an insane world thinks you're insane, then it's confirmation of your sanity. And that's something that's driven me on through all these decades of abuse and ridicule. Is you know, they say you know someone by who their friends are. Well, there's another way of putting that. You know someone by who's attacking them.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely you do.
Yeah, I said that a lot. It's worth friends at home. It's worth taking us on board. A lot of people have said during the last 2 years of nonsense, yeah, but Chris, my friends don't. And I'm like, well, they're not your friends then, are you? They're people that you know. They're associates. Your friends love you and they listen to you. And in addition, just what David just said, 99% of people have yet to wake up. You shouldn't be judging yourself on what they think. You just got to keep a bit of distance, not physical distance, and, you know, keep a healthy. We don't judge people. Everyone's on a different journey. But like I say, for me, I love talking about this stuff, and it's great to have someone who's got the knowledge that I can have this conversation. So, David, just brilliant. I really hope to. I hope we can have another conversation at some point in the future. Massive love to you. Please pass that on to all of your family. That goes for everybody at home. Big love to you all. I hope you found this as fascinating as I have. If you can like and subscribe, folks, you know the routine, and hit the like bell. And Bill Gates and the WF might think they've got this, but they haven't, but we have.
Hallelujah. Cheers, Chris.
Cheers, David.